What's up, everybody? Welcome back to today's reception. For this episode, we're gonna react to Nolan Wells autopsy results. I don't know what to think, y'all. Let's just get right into it.
Preliminary findings from Nolan Wells' independent autopsy show his cause of death is undetermined, pending further investigation. Ben Crump, the family's attorney, announced the findings earlier in Chicago. He says the autopsy was performed 4 days after the 18-year-old's body was found on the shore of Horn Island in Mississippi. Crump also said the doctor who performed the autopsy could not rule out foul play.
In the preliminary discussion opinion, this forensic pathologist identified several limitations during the second autopsy that create barriers to establishing a definitive cause and manner of death for Nolan Xavier Wells.
NBC News national correspondent Aaron Gilchrist joins me now from Chicago. So, Aaron, so many unanswered questions still after this independent autopsy. You spoke with the attorney, Ben Crump, earlier. What did he tell you? And how soon will we get the other autopsy, the one done by Jackson County Coroner's Office?
Yeah, Vicki, we don't know. I'll answer that question first. We don't know when we'll see that particular autopsy, the official one done by the state, partly because a grand jury will have to review the investigative file, which will include the autopsy. And so it may be a while before the public gets to see any of that. The family may get some of the information a little bit sooner than the rest of us. I did ask Ben Crump about this particular independent autopsy that he had done and the fact that there are still many questions that the forensic pathologist who did the examination still has. And he said partly because there's information that the state's examiner was able to get early on that the independent autopsy just isn't going to have access to in the short term. They're hoping to be able to get access to some of that information so that they can do a more thorough report for this independent autopsy and give that to the family, who I should mention were in the room as we were getting the really graphic details about what was in that autopsy report. I want you to hear from Nolan Wells' parents today.
Knowing that a part of me I will never talk to, I will never hold.
It is our hope that our local authorities will do what they need to do, because us having the preliminary autopsy results and hearing nothing from them, it's heartbreaking and it's concerning, which again.
And Vicki, I think it's also worth noting that because of the sort of incomplete nature of what this medical examiner was able to pull together, he also said that he can't rule out if a non-accidental factor contributed to Nolan's death.
And Aaron, the United Cajun Navy, they helped search for Nolan. They're pushing back against some of Ben Crump's claims. What are they saying?
So one member of that organization did an interview yesterday, I believe, on a podcast and said that Nolan's body was found face down and fully clothed in the water on July 6th. And Ben Crump repeated that today in this news conference. It wasn't clear on whether he was repeating what he read in reports about that interview or if he was told that himself. The Cajun Navy did put out a statement later on saying that they did not tell the family that that was the condition in which they found, which they observed Nolan. He said, I observed the body from the air and he was visibly wearing only swim trunks that matched the photos taken of him that day. Crump misrepresented what the United Cajun Navy said. Vicki?
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news.
Oh my goodness. How you misinterpret what somebody said about something like that? They really didn't say much. I want to know more about the autopsy.
6. Preliminary findings, and this is significant. Focal area of red discoloration in the soft tissue of the back of the head, the occipital region. He said the etiology is unknown at this time. He said the body was received after the initial autopsy. He said the body had marked decompensation. He said corona incision of the scalp, brain removal, Y-shaped incision of the anterior torso, And he talked about the organs being removed, as is common, accompanied in the body cavity. And that when you have an autopsy, the organs are removed from the body and they are dissected and examined. And then they are put back in a bag within inside the body. So when they're buried, their remains will all be with them. But in this occasion, if there's going to be a second autopsy, then the organs are put in the body cavity so the second pathologist could be able to examine the organs as well. Very significant for Dr. Mitchell was that the anterior inner neck structures were absent, not received with the body. And we'll explain that in just a minute. And then it talks about the additional procedures performed during the second autopsy. And we'll go into the paragraphs on that there because he explains it better in his narrative. So where's the first page of the discussion? Not the diagram yet. You keep the diagram over there. So he talks in the preliminary discussion, opinion. This forensic pathologist identified several limitations during the second autopsy that create barriers to establishing a definitive cause and manner of death for Nolan Xavier Wells. And that's important. He talks about the fact that we didn't get to see the body when it was first recovered, like the medical examiner working for Mississippi would have seen it. He talked about the second autopsy performed on Nolan Wells revealed marked decompensation or changes. Marked decompensation can obscure the presence and absence of bruising on the skin surface, especially during a second autopsy examination. What he's saying, because the body was so decomposed that you couldn't tell if there was bruises or abrasions on the body when he received it on the 10th of July. For these reasons, additional dissection procedures not performed during the first autopsy examination were performed to rule out potential blunt force injuries responsible for the death. These procedures included facial dissection, posterior head and neck dissection, dissection of the ribs, the pelvic, dissection of the subcutaneous and deep soft tissue, dissection of the back, the buttocks, the arms and legs. He did all of this to rule out things. He ruled out there were no fractures or deep tissue injuries identified. This was very important because he wanted to be very thorough and very transparent, because transparency is the key to getting to the answers of why Nolan Wells is not with us. So he did that there and was very straightforward, very open, very open. He says, however, dissection of the back of the head during the layered posterior neck dissection revealed a 12 by 8 inch focal area of red discoloration in the deep soft tissues overlaying the occipital bone. And he talked about how he found red discoloration when he cut open into the back of his head towards the occipital bone, and he saw the red discoloration, and we actually saw the pictures of it. It's significant. You can't help but notice, why is this dark red here in the back of his head? And so he was important to note that in his report. He said that etiology of this finding is unclear. There are no lacerations of the overlaying skin nor fractures of the underlying skull. These findings are inconclusive for perimortem injury due to both the extensive decomposition and the absence of associated injuries. This finding, however, is significant enough to be highlighted in this preliminary report for further investigation. It is important to reiterate that the finding could not have been observed in the first autopsy because the posterior head and neck dissection were not performed. He said another limitation, move this back here. Another limitation faced by this forensic pathologist was the absence of the anterior internal neck structures. The trachea and the laryngeal cartilage, the thyroid horn, and the hyoid bone were not received with the body. So he's saying that the throat was not received with the body when he got Nolan Wells' body in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. And so let's discuss that with what he said about that. He said, it is assumed that the initial pathologist retained these structures for additional evaluation. He said the retention of the anterior neck structures during an initial autopsy is a common forensic pathology practice. He was chief medical examiner for 7 years in Washington, D.C., and he said that if they had concern about throat or any fracture or compression of the throat, they too will hold them back. He doesn't know why they held the throat back, but he said the throat was not with the body of Nolan Wells when he received it in Washington, D.C. to perform the second autopsy. He said, nevertheless, a posterior neck dissection performed without review of the anterior neck structures is incomplete. Therefore, this pathologist cannot rule out injury to the neck as a contributor or a cause of death. He said he would need to have the medical examiner in Mississippi allow him to review the throat. That's why he said his autopsy is undetermined pending investigation. Remember, it's about transparency. Because the initial autopsy rightfully removed and dissected each organ, there are additional limitations inherent in the second autopsy of Nolan Wells. The most significant of the limitations was the inability to directly observe the airway and the lungs for water and directly observe the stomach for gastric contents. He said it is very significant.
Who's that? Oh, mama.
As to what the initial forensic scientists who got to review the body when it was recovered. We have heard from our call center people saying the body wasn't waterlogged. Well, we need to know those things. But unfortunately, because the body was decomposed and the organs have already been dissected, those are things we can only get from the initial autopsy. So therefore, again, the manner and cause of death is undetermined until further investigation. We are hopeful that the Mississippi medical examiner would give Dr. Mitchell an opportunity to see their photographs and their observations to the Lastly, in case
Yep, y'all want to watch the rest of this, y'all link be down in the description. If you like this video, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when I drop more videos. You never miss out on them. Till next time, y'all, I'm out.